Until we teach our children that we have to jettison this silly, ignorant ideology that I can only feel good about myself if I'm loved by white America, and I can only be protected or affirmed if I'm protected and affirmed by my government, we will never go any further. If we can ever get that sizable chunk, about 15% of the black vote, away from the Democratic Party, we'll take them down forever. And I believe that black men are not going to go back to Ms. Harris.
Vince Everett Ellison is a political commentator, author, and documentarian on the intersection of American politics, race, and religion. Born on a cotton plantation in Haywood County, Tennessee, Ellison admired how his parents lifted him and his 6 siblings out of poverty through hard work and their Christian faith. He graduated from Memphis State University and worked at a maximum security prison before entering the nonprofit arena as part of the National Center for Public Policy Research's Project 21 Black Leadership Network. In his popular book, The Iron Triangle, Ellison draws upon his life experiences to connect the dots between black preachers, civic organizers, and the Democratic politicians who benefit from promoting detrimental policies to black Americans. His latest book, The End of Tolerance, criticizes the left's elevation of tolerance as the ultimate American virtue. In today's episode, we discuss the Democrats' most depraved policies, Donald Trump's appeal to black voters, and Ellison's reaction to the Chicago DNC. We also explore why progressive politics thrive on arrogance and how humility can be found in religious faith. As we navigate one of the most contentious election seasons of our lifetime, you won't want to miss Vince Everett Ellison's analysis of Democratic Party politics. Welcome back to another episode of the Sunday Special. Vince, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Man, it is my pleasure. I've been watching you for years, and I am a fan.
Hey, thank you so much. So why don't we start with, obviously, the hot topic. It's the 2024 election cycle. The Democrats offed their old candidate, Joe Biden. They have replaced him with their brand new, joyous, wondrous, incredible light-bringer candidate, Kamala Harris, running against Donald Trump. You know, what do you make of Kamala Harris, the candidate?
Kamala Harris has been an opportunist her whole life. You know, she was Willie Brown's side piece when she was in San Francisco, running around with Montel Williams, and she was still to get into San Francisco politics. And then after that, she played Indian to get the Indian vote. Then she made sure that she married a man that obviously had money to make sure that she could get the Jewish vote. And then after that, she played black to get the black vote. So Kamala Harris will do whatever she needs to do to get power. I always knew that once she became vice president, that Joe Biden needed to watch his back because she was going to stab him in it sooner or later. I mean, I watched her when she ran in the primary, and she didn't make it to Iowa, but she had a plan. So Kamala got Joe Biden to get 100 black men to write him a letter telling him that if he did not choose a black woman for his vice presidency, they was going to deep six his campaign. So she got P. Diddy, Akon, a bunch of thugs and rappers and greasy preachers to write him a letter. And Joe Biden capitulated. And then Kamala Harris went up to Joe Biden, and because Joe had dementia, he didn't know any better, told him that she was black. Joe bought it. And she slid into a slot designed for a black woman. So she played the game for a while. She walked around grinning and aggravating people and doing stupid stuff, and waited until America finally figured out that Joe Biden was crazy. And when we figured out he was crazy, they kicked him out and put her in. So it was masterfully done. Somebody behind there figured it out because she didn't have enough sense to do it. So we got to find out who Kamala's puppet master is and give him a lot of kudos. But it's going to catch up with her, Ben.
So let's talk about, kind of the elephant in the race that has to do with race when it comes to the Democratic Party, which is the Democratic Party really since 2012 has relied very heavily on heavy black turnout. That was the model that Barack Obama applied to politics in 2012. In 2008, he won a broad victory across pretty much every demographic in the United States. When it came to black voters in 2012, however, he needed heavy turnout in places like Ohio, in Michigan, in order to secure his reelect victory in 2012. And ever since then, there's been this super heavy reliance on the black vote by every politician, whether it is Hillary Clinton in 2016, whether it is Joe Biden in 2020, and now whether it is the Kamala Harris campaign in 2024. And you were starting to see some early inklings that the black vote was actually moving away from the Democrats in the early part of this race. You started to see some interesting polls that showed upward of 20% in some cases of black Americans saying they would vote for Donald Trump, which would be a historic shift. It'd be the largest share of the black vote won by any Republican since, I believe, Richard Nixon. It would be a huge share of the black vote. And now, since Kamala has jumped in the race, it seems that the polls have sort of reverted back to type, and now those numbers are back down in the 8, 9, 10% range. Why is it that the Democratic Party, number one, is so reliant on the black vote? And number two, why do black Americans keep voting in such outsized number for the Democratic Party? I mean, I'm used to this question being asked about Jews, and my usual answer is, well, because most Jews are not religious, right? Judaism is a religion. It's not just an ethnicity. And so you're talking, when it comes to Jews, about a very largely secular atheistic population that has high income and lives in blue areas. You just described kind of a typical Democratic voter. When it comes to black voters, however, this has been sort of a puzzle for a lot of Republican politicos. Why is it that the black vote goes so heavy for Democrats these days, despite the failure of Democrats in every major American city in the country?
It's cognitive dissonance and Stockholm syndrome. You have to take it all the way back to slavery and to the Jim Crow era. I was born on a cotton plantation in Haywood County, Tennessee. My father was a sharecropper, so I've lived the real black life. He brought us out of poverty in the 1970s by working in the insurance industry. And we started a gospel singing group, and we went around into black churches and whatnot, singing to black churches all over the South. I went to college at the University of Memphis, and then after college, I started working in a prison. And in that prison, I got a really, really serious education. It was in the 90s when the Clinton-Biden crime bill was locking up black men all over America. And I started asking the black intelligentsia, I said, man, why are all these young black men being locked up? And of course, I got the same old refrain. Rich, white, evil Republicans hate black people, and they just want to see them locked up. Well, I was naive. And I said, okay, really? So I quit my job. I started a nonprofit, went into the black community. And when I got into the ghettos, I saw something very, very interesting. I saw no evil, rich, white Republicans anywhere. You see a unicorn or a leprechaun before you saw one. But what I did see were a lot of black Democrats making a lot of money off of the chaos. And I wrote my first book about these black Democrats, and I called them the Iron Triangle. They were most black preachers, most black politicians, and most black civil rights workers. Their job was to be conduits between rich white liberals and the poor black community, and their job was to make sure that these black people voted for the Democratic Party by hook or by crook. It was a play on the old plantation system, where the house Negroes were in charge of the field hands, and they were conduits between the master in the big house and the field hands in the field. So after the Civil War, of course, we had this little period called Reconstruction. For a little while, black people voted for the Republican Party. But by the election of 1876, the Tilden Hayes election, the whole South went Democrat. Everything went red. They had the Mississippi and the South Carolina plan that talked about intimidating black people, paying black people, killing black people, and buying the black vote. And the black slaves who had previously voted Republican somehow or another reverted back to the Democratic Party in the election of 1876. They made the compromise, as you know. The Republican Hayes took the South when South Carolina decided they would give him their electoral college votes if he pulled the Union troops out of the South. And after that, the Democratic Party went gangbusters on the black community. Beatings, killings, you name it, they did it. To become a Republican was a pejorative in the black community. You would get killed for it. If your father or your mother even heard that you were a Republican, they would beat the hell out of you themselves. So it got to a point where Stockholm syndrome and cognitive dissonance took place in the black community. It became an explanation, not a condemnation. It's just how it was. And after that time, they put their black placekeepers in charge, the black preacher, the black politician, and the black civil rights workers, and told them your job is to keep the black people exactly where they're supposed to be. Lie to them, bribe them, use social pressure, do whatever you need to do. And it's been that way ever since. So when my grandfather, Walter Clark, got the right to vote in 1960, even though Richard Nixon and Eisenhower had made it possible through the 1957 Civil Rights Act and the 1960 Civil Rights Act, when he voted, his first vote was for the Democratic Party, even though the Democratic Party and the Ku Klux Klan had put him off the cotton plantation that he was living on. When he registered to vote, he still voted for them. Stockholm syndrome is so powerful. You remember Patty Hearst. You take on the characteristics of your oppressor, And the Democratic Party was such a brutal master. And black people were so isolated that even when they got the right to vote, they voted for their master. The Civil Rights Movement showed it. We weren't fighting to separate from white Democrats and the Ku Klux Klan. Martin Luther King and his boys was fighting to integrate with them. We were the first race of people in the history of the world to fight to integrate with our former masters. Even the Jewish people, after the Holocaust, said, we're getting the hell out of Germany. We don't want to integrate with these Nazis. It would have been the equivalent of, after the Holocaust, the Jewish people in Germany said, well, now we want to integrate with the Nazis and let them educate our children. It was insanity. And now we see what's going on. Black people are so beaten down. They're so controlled. They have been so humiliated and so broken that they still identify with their former oppressors and their former masters. And we have to work to change that.